Have you ever had the strange sensation of being a present body, but an absent soul? As if you were here, living, breathing, doing everything right, but something inside you was silent, as if observing everything from afar? Maybe you've tried to fit in families that suffocated you, in relationships that required you to wear masks, in jobs that dulled your shine. You tried to be what was expected, and yet you never felt whole. Rumi said, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But what if that light showed you something you weren't ready to see? What if she revealed that your suffering is not a mistake, but a reminder that your soul never belonged in the places you fought so hard to remain? Maybe you're not broken. Maybe you are just in the process of being reborn, and this process hurts because it requires you to abandon the illusion that you need to fit in. It hurts because everything around you screams for normality, while your soul whispers for freedom. This is the silent pain of those who have a soul that doesn't fit in, the soul that loves too deeply in a world that feels too little, the soul that seeks meaning while everyone runs after distractions, the soul that prefers silence to hypocrisy, truth to convenience, feeling to pretending. Do you feel it? That invisible discomfort that appears when you're surrounded by people but still feel alone? That inexplicable pain of not being seen, even when you're showing yourself completely? Maybe you grew up hearing that you were too sensitive, too intense, too complicated, but no one ever told you it was spiritual, that this was a call of your soul. Rumi did not write for those who fit in. He wrote for those who burn, for those who seek, for those who tear themselves apart trying to understand why they can't be like everyone else. And that's why you're here, because somewhere inside you, there is a truth pulsing, a timid but constant certainty that there is something more, something that explains why you never fit. Why have you always felt out of place even when you were doing everything right? You're not weird, you're deep. You are not inadequate, you are spiritual. You are not lost, you are being redirected. And the more you try to fit into structures made for sleeping souls, the more your own soul cries out to awaken. This video is a revelation, not in the sense of bringing something new, but of remembering what you already knew but forgot. The ancient wisdom your soul carries since before birth, the certainty that what hurts also points the way, and the emptiness you feel is not weakness. It's called. Maybe the universe is pushing you inward. Maybe all your attempts to belong have failed, so that you finally belong to yourself. Can you feel it? This is not an ordinary pain. It is a sacred pain, the pain of those who are waking up, of someone who is crossing the emotional desert between what they were and what they are about to become. It's the beginning of a spiritual awakening that does not begin with peace, but with discomfort, because before the light comes the break, before clarity comes chaos. Before you find your tribe, you have to have the courage to step away from the crowd. You are exactly where you are supposed to be, even if you don't understand, even if it hurts, even if it seems like the end. What you feel now may just be the beginning of a truth that no one ever told you. And that's what we're going to talk about now, about the pain that no one sees, about the emptiness you learn to hide even from God, about the silent effort you make every day to look good, when in reality you're falling apart inside. Have you ever felt that the more you give, the more you become exhausted, as if your presence were invisible and your love disposable? Have you ever looked in the mirror trying to understand where you lost yourself? Maybe you've been trying too hard for too long. Maybe you're fighting to hold on to something that no longer exists, or pretending not to feel it, just to continue being accepted. But between us, I need to ask you, how many times have you silenced your soul to accommodate what hurts? How many times have you shut yourself out for fear of being rejected again? This is the pain the world ignores. The pain of those who feel too much in a time they value too little. The pain of someone who loves deeply and always ends up last. But you are not alone. This journey is shared by thousands of sensitive, intense, and spiritual souls like yours. And that's why this video exists. To be a mirror of your pain and a seed of your healing. If up until now you felt like I was talking to you, or rather to your soul, then write in the comments, "My soul is awakening, even without fitting in." Write this down, not just for me, but as a symbol for yourself, an act of presence, of listening, of acceptance. And if this message made sense, leave your like. Not out of vanity, but because it helps this content reach other souls who, like yours, are silent, waiting for a word that recognizes them. Subscribe too. This channel is more than videos. It's a safe space, a refuge for those who feel too much. Here, every word is a hug, every silence a prayer. And now that you've come this far, take a deep breath. Because what comes next will show you that this invisible pain has a much deeper root, and understanding this origin can be the beginning of your spiritual liberation. Have you ever felt like your soul didn't fit anywhere? Like you were always trying to fit in, to please, to belong, but something inside you still screamed silently? Like even when surrounded by people, you were still a stranger in your own life? Like you spoke a language no one around you understood? This feeling of displacement, of being too deep for a shallow world, is not unique to you. There's a specific pain that accompanies those who carry an old soul, a soul that sees beyond appearances, that feels beyond what's permitted, that seeks true connection in a time where everything seems disposable. And the cruelest thing is that the world rarely acknowledges this pain, because it doesn't bleed out, because it doesn't make noise, because it disguises itself as strength, as independence, as everything's okay, but it's not okay, and you know it. Maybe you grew up believing you needed to be less to be loved, less sensitive, less intense, less you. Maybe you learned to hide your depth because every time you showed yourself completely, someone said it was exaggerated, dramatic, fragile. Maybe at some point in your life, you internalized the idea that feeling so much was wrong, and so you've been trying to numb yourself, adapt, shrink, and that's tiring, really tiring. Because living trying to fit into spaces that were never created for you is like wearing shoes that hurt you every day, but which you insist on wearing with a smile on your face. And the worst part, many people don't even notice your pain, because you've learned to do it well, to pretend you don't feel it, to smile on the outside while screaming on the inside, to give advice to others while barely listening to your own soul. But there comes a time when the soul can no longer bear being ignored, and she begins to scream. Not with words, but with exhaustion, with anxiety, with insomnia, with silent crises in the middle of the night, with that constant feeling of emptiness, even when everything seems normal, with that discomfort that appears in the most unlikely places, in the embrace of someone who doesn't see you, in the compliment that doesn't reach you, in the routine that no longer makes sense. This is the invisible problem, the one no one sees, the one no one understands, the one you often try to rationalize. Maybe it's just stress. Maybe I'm just being ungrateful. There are so many people with bigger problems, and so you keep silencing yourself, betraying yourself, moving further away from your true self. But what if I told you this isn't weakness? That this emptiness, this pain, this constant discomfort are signs that your soul is alive and trying to wake you up? What if this feeling of not belonging is actually a calling? A reminder that you didn't come here to fit in, but to remind others that there is another way to live, to feel, to love. Rumi wrote, "Don't stray from who you are. You were sent with this intensity for a reason. This intensity that so many have tried to erase from you is the same force that will guide you back home." And when I say home, I don't mean a physical place. I mean a state of being, an inner space where your soul can finally breathe without needing to hide. Of course it hurts, of course it's tiring, because this is the journey of someone who carries an awakened soul in a sleeping world. You feel more, perceive more, care more, and because of that, you also experience more disappointment. But that doesn't make you weak, it makes you human. It makes you whole. The real problem isn't feeling too much, but living in a world that values control, rationality, and superficiality. And when you begin to realize this, something inside you changes. You begin to understand that the discomfort of not fitting in is actually a compass. It points to a path few have the courage to follow, the path of inner truth. And that's when everything starts to make sense. Not the logical sense the mind seeks, but the spiritual sense the soul recognizes. You realize you're not alone, that there's a legion of sensitive, spiritual souls silently searching for something greater, and that maybe, just maybe, your mission isn't to understand everything, but rather to accept that not all pain needs an explanation. Some pains are portals, portals to a new way of existing, a new way of seeing oneself, a new way of relating to the world, no longer as someone who needs to adapt, but as someone who finally remembers who they are. And before we move on, I want you to write something in the comments. Not for me, but for you. Write something like this: I stopped trying to fit in. Now I allow my soul to breathe. Write this down. To affirm your truth. To declare your return. To remind yourself that the soul that doesn't fit in is the same one that came to awaken. What no one told you is that some souls came to break patterns, not to follow them. And this comes at a price. A silent, profound, and often lonely price. Since you were a child, you sensed something different about you. While others seemed satisfied with shallow answers, you wanted to dive in. You wanted to know the reason for things. You wanted to feel more than see. You wanted to understand the invisible. It wasn't just curiosity. It was a thirst for your soul. It was your essence already trying to remember who you were, even amidst the world's programming. Rumi said, "You were born with wings. Why do you insist on crawling through life?" And perhaps that's the most important question you need to ask yourself right now. How many times have you ignored your own feelings to go with the flow of a system that never embraced your truth? How many times have you hidden your brilliance so as not to disturb those who preferred darkness? How many times have you diminished yourself to fit where there was no room for your spiritual greatness? What hurts you isn't just rejection, it's renunciation. It's what your soul had to give up to avoid being abandoned, excluded, called strange, exaggerated, dramatic. But there comes a time when the soul can no longer bear to grovel. It begins to sabotage you, creating symptoms, anguish, and profound exhaustion that no logic can explain, because it's telling you, with every cell in your body, that living like this is no longer possible. And that's where the spiritual root of this pain of not fitting in comes in. You don't suffer because there's something wrong with you. You suffer because you're trying to build a life on foundations that don't honor your soul. You're trying to create stability on the denial of who you truly are. And the soul, no matter how much you try to silence it, will always find a way to make itself heard. This spiritual root is ancient. It's a silent contract your soul made even before birth. A profound call to remind others of what they've forgotten. But how can you awaken someone without first crossing your own desert? How can you guide if you yourself don't know the darkness? This is why many souls who came to heal are first broken. Not as punishment, but as initiation. You are being initiated, and it hurts. Because before you can heal, you must bleed. Before you can free yourself, you must feel the weight of your chains. Before you can teach, you must forget. Because it is in this forgetting that compassion is born, and it is from compassion that true spiritual power springs. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And that doesn't mean passively accepting suffering. It means allowing each crack to reveal a new piece of your essence. Every relationship that hurt you, every absence that shaped you, every silence that swallowed you, all of this was part of the process, not to destroy you, but to unveil you. The world teaches us to fear breaking, to resist pain, to seek anesthesia. But the soul isn't interested in comfort. It's interested in truth, and the truth is often uncomfortable. It shows you that what you called failure was merely redirection, that what you called abandonment was, in fact, liberation, that what you thought destroyed you only stripped you of what was never yours. You don't fit in because you weren't made to follow. You were made to remember, to provoke, to transform, and your presence, even silently, carries this mission. People sense it, even if they can't explain it. There's something about you that bothers, that confronts, that illuminates too much. And that's why, so often, you've been left aside, rejected not for who you are, but for the mirror you offer, a mirror that exposes wounds others aren't yet ready to look at. But make no mistake, this doesn't make you less. It makes you more aware, more responsible, more called. And that's exactly why the pain of not belonging hurts so much. Because deep down you know you didn't come just to live. You came to awaken, to heal, to rescue lost parts of the world through your own story. Do you feel it? This restlessness that never goes away? This constant discomfort, even when everything seems peaceful? This desire to go deeper, to dive deeper, to touch what the eyes cannot see? This is not weakness. This is longing for your origin. It's the spiritual call echoing within you. And now, as you listen to this, perhaps something is stirring inside. Not a precise answer, but a memory, an ancient whisper that says, "This is it. This is why I am this way. This is the beginning of return, of acceptance, of reconnecting with your own soul." Before we continue, write in the comments, "My soul remembers who I am." Write this as a silent commitment to your essence, as an affirmation of your own truth. Because the world may have tried to mold you, but your soul, it always knew the way. The spiritual revelation is simple and brutal. You don't fit in because you were born to be a bridge, not a wall. And when you understand this, everything within you begins to change. The questions that once tortured you begin to dissolve. The pain of not belonging ceases to be a burden and becomes a compass. The emptiness that once felt like punishment reveals itself to be sacred space. Space for something new, true, to finally be born. Most people learn from an early age to build walls. Emotional, social, spiritual walls. Walls that protect but also isolate, that hide the soul and mask pain, that silence the truth in the name of acceptance. But you weren't born to build walls. You were born to build bridges. Bridges between the visible and the invisible. Between the rational and the intuitive. Between pain and healing. Between the wounded soul and the awakening that transforms. And that's precisely why your path has never been easy. Because every bridge, before it can be built, must cross an abyss. And that abyss is yours. It's the place where you've fallen so many times, where you felt alone, forgotten, disconnected. It's there, in that space between what you were and what you're becoming, that the key begins to reveal itself. Not with a bang, but with a whisper. Not with explanations, but with presence. The key is to realize that pain didn't come to destroy you, but to shape you. What no one told you is that the healing process isn't about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you were before the world taught you to forget. It's about peeling back layers, undoing pacts, breaking silent contracts with pain, shame, and guilt. It's about allowing light to enter precisely where everything seemed lost. Rumi said, "Pain can be a garden of compassion. If you keep your heart open through it all, your pain will become your greatest blessing." And most people will never understand this. They run away from pain. They run from it. They numb themselves to avoid feeling it. But you're here. And that already makes you different. Because only those who have had the courage to look within know how hard it is to not give up on yourself. The hidden key isn't changing the world. It's changing the way you relate to it. It's stopping asking for permission to exist. It's stopping seeking external approval for what's already sacred within you. It's accepting that you won't be understood by everyone, and still moving forward. It's realizing that your soul isn't fragile. It's sensitive. And this sensitivity, contrary to what you've been told, is your strength. You didn't come to please. You came to awaken. And that's scary, because awakenings are uncomfortable. They destabilize structures, challenge comfort, and break patterns. And you'll often feel alone. But that's also part of the process. Silence, solitude, doubt. All of this is part of the preparation. Because before you can guide others, you must go through your own fire. And going through fire is painful. You lose people. You lose versions of yourself. You lose illusions. But what remains after the ashes, is what can never be taken from you. It's your essence. It's your truth. It's the voice of your soul, steadfast, clear, alive. The key is to understand that everything that's happened so far was part of it, including the pain, including the moments when you thought you couldn't handle it, because it was precisely those moments that opened the door for something new to emerge. You wouldn't be hearing this now if everything had gone your way. You're here because something inside you knows there's more, that your soul is calling you back, that the awakening has already begun. And make no mistake, awakening isn't about becoming enlightened and ceasing to feel. It's about feeling even more, with awareness. It's about seeing more clearly. It's about loving more deeply. It's about living more fully even when everything around you seems to be falling apart. Because now you know. You know that every tear carries a message, that every silence holds an answer, that every pain is, in fact, an initiation. You don't fit in because your soul is expanding, and expansion hurts. It hurts because it demands detachment. It hurts because it demands courage. It hurts because it undoes everything that was comfortable. But it is this pain that reveals the bridge. that shows the way, that transforms you into someone capable of seeing beyond the veil, of touching the invisible, of recognizing in others what was once wounded in you, and for this very reason, it becomes healing. You are a bridge, and that is a gift few will have the courage to carry, but those who do will never regret, because there is nothing more sacred than being who you truly are, even when the whole world tries to convince you otherwise. And now that you're feeling this truth pulsing inside you, write in the comments, "I am the bridge between pain and healing." Write as a reminder, as a silent but powerful affirmation, because there's someone out there waiting for a bridge. And maybe, without knowing it, they're waiting for you. Maybe you're in a relationship where you have to hide your intensity, where every time you demonstrate your emotional depth, the other person pulls away, where love has become synonymous with restraint, censorship, and self-abandonment. You find yourself mincing words, disguising feelings, controlling your feelings just to keep someone close, and it consumes you, because your soul doesn't know how to love halfway. It doesn't understand the game of indifference, the strategy of omission, the fear of appearing vulnerable. Your soul is whole, and that's precisely why it suffers when it has to pretend it doesn't feel. Or maybe you're in a job where your sensitivity is seen as weakness, where empathy is synonymous with being fragile, where you've been taught that emotion doesn't mix with professionalism, that silence is a lack of initiative, that introspection is a flaw, and so you start to force yourself to create a colder, more linear, more controlled persona. You start to stifle your intuition to follow logic. You start to deny your soul to fit the machine, and at first it even seems to work, but soon emptiness sets in, unreasonable fatigue, a loss of meaning, because there is no true fulfillment where the soul is not welcome. But what really hurts isn't being different. What hurts is forcing yourself to appear the same. It's silencing your essence to fit a mold that constricts you. It's betraying yourself every day just to be accepted. It's wearing emotional clothes that weren't made for you and trying to smile as if you were comfortable. That's what makes you sick. That's what exhausts you. That's what, little by little, extinguishes the sparkle in your eyes, your enthusiasm for life, your connection with your own existence. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? Have you ever found yourself in a place where everyone seemed happy, and yet something inside you remained restless? Have you tried to convince yourself that everything was fine, when deep down you knew something was wrong? Have you accepted emotional crumbs just to avoid dealing with the fear of abandonment? Have you held back tears in the middle of work, in the middle of a conversation, in the middle of the night, just to keep from falling apart? Completely? This is more common than you think, and more dangerous too, because what begins as adaptation turns into denial, and the further you distance yourself from your truth, the louder your soul screams, first with whispers, then with bodily pain, with emotional crises, with sleepless nights, and then, if nothing changes, comes the collapse, the rupture, the silent explosion, that moment when you simply can't keep pretending anymore. But there is another path, and it begins when you understand that your depth is a gift, not a flaw, that your intensity is strength, not exaggeration, that your sensitivity is vision, not weakness. When you stop shrinking to be accepted and start expanding, even if it scares those who were accustomed to your more restrained version. Before, you diminished yourself. You shrank. You molded yourself. You said yes when you meant no. You agreed out of fear of confrontation. You smiled out of fear of abandonment. But that's not peace. This is survival. And you didn't come here just to survive. Then you begin to remember. Remember that there's a center within you that doesn't need external approval to exist. Remember that you have the right to express yourself truthfully, even if not everyone understands. Remember that the soul didn't come into this world to adapt. It came to transform. And your pain, however unfair it may seem, carries an invitation to this transformation. It's at this moment that you begin to free yourself, not from the world, but from the invisible bonds the world has placed on you. You begin to look back and realize how many times you kept quiet when you should have spoken up. How many times you distanced yourself just to avoid causing trouble. And that hurts, yes. It hurts to face. It hurts to acknowledge. But this pain is sacred, because it's what begins the healing process. And then, you start living differently, more consciously, more whole. You start speaking more truthfully, listening more deeply, loving more deeply. You start saying no without guilt, distancing yourself from those who only come to suck you in, choosing yourself even when it means disappointing others' expectations. And that is freedom. But understand, it's not easy, because the world wasn't made for awakened souls. It will test you. It will try to push you back to your old self. It will use guilt, fear, loneliness, but you no longer fit there. And as difficult as it may be, you will begin to recognize that there is something in you that remains steadfast even in the face of the storm. It's your essence. It's the part of you that never gave up, even when everything seemed meaningless. You begin to trust your intuition more, listen to the signs more, respect the cycles more. You begin to feel that life is speaking to you all the time, in synchronicities, in encounters, in pauses. You begin to realize that you don't need to shout to be heard, nor prove yourself to be worthy, because now you know there's a place where you don't need to hide, and that place is yourself. Before we continue, write in the comments, "My depth is my home." Write this down as an anchor, as a reminder, as a whisper from your soul saying, "You're not wrong for feeling so much. You're just coming home. You are not lost. You are being called." And I need you to hear this with an open heart, without resistance, without judgment, without trying to fit these words into the logic of the world. Because this call does not come from the mind. It comes from the soul. It doesn't shout, it whispers. And that is precisely why so many ignore it, because they are too busy trying to survive, when they were meant to awaken. This feeling of being lost, of no longer knowing who you are, of not recognizing yourself in places that once seemed safe, it's not a sign of failure. It's a sign of transition. You're halfway between the old you and the one you're about to be. And that's why everything seems confusing. Because the soul is rewriting your story. It's removing the shackles. It's shattering the mirrors that reflected distorted versions of you. Rumi said, "Don't be content with stories of how things happen to others. Awaken your own legend." And this phrase, poetic as it may seem, carries an urgent truth. You didn't come to copy trajectories. You didn't come to repeat patterns. You came to blaze trails that have not yet been trodden, to live a story that only your soul can tell. And that takes courage. The courage to unlearn what you were taught about who you should be. The courage to say enough to everything that keeps you small. The courage to look at yourself with new eyes and recognize the sacredness that exists in every part of you that has been discredited. The shift in consciousness begins at this moment, when you realize that what seemed like weakness was actually a sign of spiritual sensitivity, that what was called intensity was pure emotional truth, that the discomfort you feel isn't inadequacy, it's lucidity, spiritual lucidity. You're seeing what many still refuse to see. You're feeling what many have learned to numb. You're moving toward what is real, while the world insists on clinging to what is illusory. You didn't come to fit in. You came to remind the world that there are souls that shine in the dark, that there is beauty in pain, that there is strength in vulnerability, that there is truth in silence, that there is a path even when everything seems to be falling apart. You are like a lantern amidst the darkness of those who haven't yet awakened. And even though this light may sometimes seem dim, know this: it is seen, it is felt, it is needed. You may not realize it, but your journey is already impacting lives. With your gaze, your presence, your sensitivity. It doesn't have to be loud to be profound. It doesn't have to be noticeable to be essential. Real transformation happens in the details, in the way you embrace those who are suffering, in the way you listen without interrupting, in the silence you offer when the other simply needs to be seen. You carry a power that doesn't shout, it pulsates, and this new consciousness that is emerging within you will change everything. It will change the way you see yourself. It will change the relationships you attract. It will change the kind of love you accept. It will even change your body, because when the soul awakens, it no longer allows you to inhabit places that make you sick. It begins to expel everything that doesn't vibrate at the frequency of truth. But it's important to know, this shift in consciousness doesn't happen all at once. It comes in waves. It comes in the simplest moments. It comes in an unexpected cry. It comes in a sentence that cuts through you. It comes in the void that finally makes sense. You don't need to understand everything right now. You just need to keep listening. Keep allowing yourself. Keep choosing yourself, even when it feels selfish. It's It's spiritual survival. And little by little, the pain begins to change shape. That pain that was once suffocating begins to become a seed. A new strength begins to sprout within you. Not the rigid strength of someone who needs to overcome everything, but the serene strength of someone who knows they are exactly where they should be. You stop running. You stop justifying yourself. You stop comparing yourself. And you finally begin to trust. You trust that what's happening now, however uncomfortable, is part of a greater plan. That each goodbye was liberation. That each loss was protection. That each silence was preparation. And that all of this was leading you back home. Not a physical home, but an inner home, where your soul can rest, breathe, and be. And it's in this house that you begin to live differently. No longer to please, no longer to prove, but to be with presence, to be with truth, to be with soul. And that's what changes everything around you. Because when a soul awakens, it causes silent earthquakes in the structures that previously supported only appearances. It disturbs, yes, but it also inspires. And that's why you're here. Not as an exception, but as an example. And now that you're feeling this call vibrate inside you, write in the comments, "My consciousness is awakening to who I really am." Write this with intention. Write it as a ritual. Because each word of yours is an echo that reverberates in other souls who, like yours, are trying to remember what they never stopped being. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you recognized every word. It wasn't by chance. No soul encounters this kind of content by accident. If this video spoke to your essence, if it touched places you didn't even know still hurt, then you already know. You are not alone. There are other souls like yours, awakening in silence, walking the same desert, feeling the same pain, seeking the same healing. This channel is a refuge for those who feel too much, for those who love too much, for those who think and remain silent, but inside scream. Here, each video is a mirror, each word is an embrace, each silence is a call. So if you want to continue this journey with us, if you want to remember, heal, free, awaken, subscribe to the channel now. Your presence here matters. Your soul has found a place where it can be exactly what it is. Sensitive, intense, spiritual. If you stayed until the end, please leave a like. Not out of habit, but as a symbol that this message touched you. A like helps spread this healing to other lost souls on this path. And that in itself is an act of love. And now, stay with us. The next video is already appearing on the screen. Click it and keep diving in, because the journey is just beginning.